one of my big favorites is Haskell Wexler.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always just felt like he was a real maverick. He still is a real maverick of filmmaking. And I think one of my favorite movies of his is kind of a big surprise, which would be Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. I remember watching Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf when I was a kid for the first time on television. And
perfect for a child. Yeah.
It was great. I was ahead of the curve there. But
that explains a lot.
Yeah. The black and white cinematography in that is just so ridiculously superb.
Yeah.
There's only a few scenes that take place outside of the house in that movie, outside of George and Martha's house. There's one scene that takes place outside of a bar that they go to in the middle of the night. And there was just something about the light shining into the camera. I'd never seen that kind of quality of light in any kind of movie before, and I made a note of who photographed it, and started looking up, Wexler's other work, and found that he had done, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and so many, and of course had directed, Medium Cool.
Yeah.
And Haskell Wexler to me is just, also like politically, Haskell Wexler is very interesting to me as well. But
he is an interesting personality too. I mean, pretty abrasive. If any of you guys haven't seen it and you have a chance, there's a documentary on him and his son.
That's a great. I was going to bring it up.
Awesome
documentary.
Tell them your names.
Yeah.
Yeah,
awesome.
and it's a great kind of portrait of their relationship, how much filmmaking kind of overtook his life and what he kind of had to sacrifice for it. And you get a story of a lot of great films, obviously, but there's also some extremely moving moment at the end where he visits his ex-wife, the mother of his son, who's in a nursing home with Alzheimer's. And, it's just a beautiful moment towards the end of that documentary. So it's a lot more than, these were the films he made, and these are the stories behind these films. It's a great documentary.
It's an awesome documentary. I was going to bring it up. I mean, it's fascinating.
Yeah. But he also did great work with Hal Ashby.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you look at Bound for Glory, he was worked uncredited on The Conversation, In the Heat of the Night, of course, and one of my very favorites of his is for John Sayles' Matewan.
Yeah. Without a doubt. Yeah.
I mean, to me, the tops for me are Wexler and Gordon Willis.
Oh, you can't forget Gordon Willis. I mean, that's essential.
Gordon Willis. When you look at Gordon Willis, is the 70s. He is the photography of the 70s. He was so ahead of his time at that point that he didn't get an Oscar nomination until the 80s. They eventually had to give him a special Oscar a few years ago, but he was so ahead of his time because he used darkness so well that when The Godfather came out and they were looking at the dailies for The Godfather, all of the executives were going, "Why is it lit so dark? You can't see Brando or whatever. We pay all this money for Brando and we're not getting to see him." But his photography has been so influential. Now, all the movies are dark like that. Everybody wants that feel,
Well, and see, he took that criticism from the first Godfather, and he pushed it even further with Godfather Part 2.
Yes,
I mean, Godfather Part 2 is like you're skating on a very thin edge there, with the level of darkness and black in that film. I mean, there are some moments where everyone was just silhouettes. And they're like, "You sure you want to go this extreme with it?" But I guess that's what it takes. It's that kind of adventurous spirit that leads to innovation, that leads to a kind of a new cinematic expression. And that's what these groundbreakers really did. And then he could go and he could do something like All the President's Men, and give credit to Woody Allen too, because people don't necessarily think of Woody Allen as the most visual of directors. But look, he brought on Gordon Willis for Annie Hall. Everybody told him he was crazy. So why are you bringing in such a celebrated artistic cinematographer for romantic comedy? He said, "Well, why not?" And
it's like one of the best. It's one of the greatest looking comedies of all time.
And Manhattan, yeah.
And Interiors and Zelig, Midsummer Night's Sex Comedy, even Stardust Memories.
He did movies for Pakula. I mean, obviously, All the President's Men. His last film was for Pakula, which was The Devil's Own. But he did Presumed Innocent, which is another extraordinarily rich-looking movie.
Yeah,
and Parallax
View. You know. Yeah. Did things for Robert Benton, Bad Company, which is a very underrated, underseen sort of quasi-western from '72 with Jeff Bridges in it.
Yeah.
Klute.
I think of Vilmos. I mean, you said Gordon Willis. It's 70s cinema. Vilmos is as well.
Yes, I agree as well.
I mean, Vilmos Zsigmond, he shot Spielberg's Sugarland Express. He missed out on Jaws. I read that he didn't want to do Jaws. He was offered Jaws, and he didn't like the script. But he said, it's a good thing I didn't do Jaws, because maybe I wouldn't have been able to do Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which was much more interesting photographically for me. McCabe and Mrs. Miller, The Deer Hunter, Deliverance.
Blowout.
Yeah, I mean, these are all awesome films. I mean,
yeah. Images. I really like his work on Altman's Images as well.
Yeah.
That's some creepy work that he did on that. And Heaven's Gate.
Yes. Yeah.
He did well on that.
Which, in spite of what anyone thinks of Heaven's Gate, which the tide of critical opinion has kind of turned on that the past few years, but it's a genius-looking movie. I mean, it's an accomplishment of massive proportions visually.
It is.
Well, I have like two examples, one of a recent and one of classic. I mean, obviously classic would be Freddie Young for Lawrence of Arabia and like the David and Ryan's Daughter. I mean, regardless of what you feel about Ryan's Daughter, it's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful movie. I
love Ryan's Daughter. I
love the music for Ryan's Daughter.
I don't know why people slam that movie.
No,
I think
because
it works quite well.
I think Ryan's Daughter is a beautiful movie. I'll be very honest with you, Dean. I just want to be on the set because I want to go out drinking with Robert Mitchum because there's a lot of downtime, obviously, and I would want to go to all those pubs with him. If you want to know the God's honest truth.
On a rainy day, one of the many rainy days on that set,
Hey, Mitchum, what are you doing? I'm not studying, if that's what you mean. Come with me.
Did you read the Roger Ebert interview with Mitchum? Was actually conducted, I think, a little after Ryan's Daughter. Or
I remember that. Yeah.
And drinking played a major part of that interview.
Freddie Young did a lot of great films. Also, like a James Bond movie, You Only Live Twice, and Lord Jim, which is another film that's not very highly regarded, but I love. But of a recent, one of my favorite cinematographers of all time is Christopher Doyle.
Yes, Wong Kar-wai stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, talk about color.
Yeah, I mean, In the Mood for Love in 2046, Chungking Express. I mean, just
Hero. Look at the color in Hero.
Hero is another one. I mean, just incredible stuff. And even stuff like Paranoid Park or Lady in the War or The White Countess. I mean, these are all beautiful films, regardless of what you may think about the substance. And there's another one that I like a lot, Last Life in the Universe, which is, I think, Thailand, a Thai film. But Takashi Miike's has like a part in that, the director. I love that movie, too. And there's The Quiet American. I mean, just so many great films. I love Doyle's work. I mean, really can't get enough of his visuals.
James Wong Howe.
I was going to bring that up. HUD, right? He did HUD, right?
He did HUD and Seconds, and he worked all the way back into the 30s. Things like Mr. Blanding's Built His Dream House and Objective Burma and Yankee Doodle Dandy. But for me, An Old Man in the Sea and Rose Tattoo and Picnic. But for me, his work on HUD and Seconds both, particularly HUD, is just more stunning black and white cinematography. I mean, if you're afraid of black and white movies, these are the kinds of black and white movies that you should see to like break you in. Because they're so rich and they're so rich in their camera movements, and some of the things look absolutely like they were filmed yesterday. They feel so contemporary. So I mean, I definitely recommend his work, and then people like Lucian Ballard, who did. Most famously did The Wild Bunch. I've become recently a big fan of John Alton, who did a lot of, he won his Oscar for An American in Paris, the Vincent Minnelli movie. But my favorite of his stuff is all of his noir work, particularly The Big Combo with Edgar Ulmer. The Big Combo was done on a very, very low budget, so they couldn't afford to build a whole lot of sets. So what John Alton did was he created sets through light. And when you take a look at something like The Big Combo, the lighting and the sense of contrast and the battle between light and dark becomes very palpable, and he's another one of the classic photographers that I'm just wild about these days. If I see Alton's name on something, I'm definitely going to watch it.
I mean, and you can't. I mean, you got to bring up, and I know I'll get shot down for this, but like Khalib Deschanel for The Black Stallion and The Right Stuff.
Incredibly.
I mean, but The Black Stallion.
He's on my list.
I don't think you could have Warhorse. I love Warhorse, but I don't know if you can have Warhorse without The Black Stallion.
And Spielberg will tell you that, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, The Black Stallion, the scene where the boy first encounters the horse is one of the most beautiful sequences in movies. And it does remind me of that scene in Warhorse where he first sees the horse. You can't help but think of The Black Stallion.
Yeah.
And you know what? He had a very special knack, for creating kind of iconic images of Americana. If you think of The Right Stuff, and then you think of something like The Natural.
Right. Let's go really further here. Go out on a fringe. Regardless of your feelings of The Passion of the Christ, if it wasn't for him, I don't think that movie would have any merit. I think he really made the look of that movie, regardless of what you feel. Forget all these stuff, the controversy. He made that movie. Without him, I don't think that movie would have been anything without him.
Yeah.
He has a way of feeling. He feels like he's heavily influenced by Gordon Willis, but yet he's able to inject a lot of vibrant color in a lot of his in many of his shots.
That's very true.
So there'll be a certain sense of darkness, but then there's also just some bright colors that pop through all of that, especially in The Right Stuff and Being There actually as well.
True,
so,
very true.
He's definitely one of the greats for sure.
Well, and then you think about I reread Paul and Cale reviews all the time, and I read her review of Network, and I love Network. But she has many, many criticisms of the film, and I read them, and I can relate to most of them. I can say, okay, I can absolutely see where you're coming from on most of your points. But one of her criticisms was the look of Network and how it's just totally flat, the image. And I'm like, yes, that's the point. And this is the prime example of what we've been discussing. With it doesn't necessarily mean great cinematography that your movie is just gorgeous and all this billowy, like just sensual imagery. It's how does the work you do bring out the themes and the subtext of the film to maximum impact. Network is a prime example. Network, it is a satire about a TV culture, kind of the dumbing down and the moral decay of society as seen through the business of television. And the movie is shot in a way that the longer it goes on, the more and more it starts to look like a television image. The flatter and more lifeless kind of the image becomes. That's the visual theme of the movie that reflects.
The cinematography is part of the satire, I think.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. That's Owen Roizman, and if you look at Owen Roizman's career, that's a spectacular career too. I mean, you look at starting with The French Connection, and then Play It Again, Sam, and The Exorcist, Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3, Straight Time, True Confessions, Tootsie. What an amazing career.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. He's got sort of, for me, Owen Roizman has this sort of bluish kind of sheen on his movies. He's got this blue-gray kind of thing going on in his movies.
He's also great.
Fascinating.
He's also great at grit. I mean, a lot of those movies that you mentioned, I mean, they're very gritty. And it's another thing, how you shoot a comedy. And you mentioned Caleb Deschanel. I mean, he shot Being There, which is, it's obviously much more than a comedy, but it is a comedic, satirical kind of film. And he shot it as you would, a dramatic film. I don't necessarily think that the different rules apply when you're shooting a comedy. I mean, you can't really shoot funny, I mean, how would you go about shooting funny?
That's the problem with a lot of comedies these days. Is that I think we've talked about this on the show about how some comedies are just blah to look at and everything, and that's because that's what the studio wants. They want it to look like a comedy, quote unquote, which means that it's got to look kind of like it's ready for TV or something.
I do agree with that, but these are examples of ones that aren't. I mean, when you look at Tootsie or Being There, or look at Roger Deakins' work with the Coen brothers. A lot of those movies, which are flat-out comedies. There's nothing flat or lifeless about those images at all.
Yeah, exactly.
What about Harris? I can't pronounce Savides.
Harris
He's great.
Savides.
I mean, he's
my second favorite of the current.
But you just look like in 2010 he did Somewhere in Greenberg, which I think are two really great visual representations of Los Angeles, and it's something like these as far as I'm concerned, they're blockbusters in my book, Zodiac and American Gangster. I mean, just a lot of diverse work. Or Birth.
I just rewatched Birth the other day, and that's an extraordinary movie. All around.
It's stuff with Van Zandt. Elephant. Yeah, Elephant. He's a really good film. People never give it the credit it deserves. Even Jerry, which is a hard film to get into, it's a beautiful film, and I think it captures the theme. The visuals capture the theme of that movie perfectly.
Yeah.
Elephant is a movie that didn't have to be as beautiful as it is, and
it may be too beautiful.
It is strangely gorgeous all the way through. It's unbelievable how well shot that movie. When I first saw that, I was like, "Who shot this? This is incredible."
Savides, I mean, Zodiac is a brilliant movie and brilliant use of the digital technology. I think the Zodiac was the point where a lot of people, including myself, said, "All right, there's no question. I mean, digital's has great capabilities when it's in the right hands." So I mean that gave a new lease on life for the idea of digital cinema, I think. But he shot The Game for Fincher too, which is an incredibly extraordinary looking movie. I mean, kind of saturated in this, nighttime, like the look of nighttime street lights, or these tobacco hues and ominous stuff.
I wanted to bring up Robert Burks, who did a lot of the Hitchcock movies, particularly, North by Northwest, Vertigo, The Wrong Man, and Rear Window, To Catch a Thief, Dial In for Murder. He's got, talk about a great sense of color. But then, he did also The Wrong Man and The Passive Blue, which are great black and white movies as well. But his sense of color, I don't know if those movies were technically Technicolor or not, but they sure feel like they are. They're hyper-real.
Particularly Vertigo, yeah.
They're like hyper real, extra saturated colors.
And I would have been interested to know his relationship with Hitchcock in relation to Mr. Richardson's relationship with Scorsese, because both of those directors have such a firm grasp of the visual medium, and they, I would imagine, Hitchcock included, they really call the shots.
And Conrad Hall. Conrad Hall, I don't think Conrad Hall ever photographed anything badly. When you go back and look at even something like Tequila Sunrise or something like that, even that looks beautiful. But and it's a lesser project, in the realm of his movies. But you look at In Cold Blood or Butch Cassidy, Road to Perdition, American Beauty.
Yeah, Road to Perdition, his final movie, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That his photography. I remember looking at Road to Perdition. There was just one scene of a close up of the boy in the movie, and it was lit from behind, and Hall got this amazing effect of like the light coming through his ear, and there was like this redness to it. And I was like, that's just so amazing. And then, Searching for Bobby Fischer as well, all of these movies, it's so difficult to talk about cinematography because it's the kind of thing you don't want to really pick apart, I don't really want to pick apart the cinematography. I just know it's great when I see it.
Right.
But we are talking about movies that work. We're not talking about, this image is great. Unfortunately, it was in a movie that didn't work. There's a consistency where they are all making terrific films, one after another, all these great people we're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, and we're talking about color as well, and one of the great examples of color in a classic film, and I think a documentary was just made on him last year, is Jack Cardiff for The Red Shoes.
That's a great documentary. That was
on The Red Shoes is known as one of the great color photography films ever made, and it's probably as responsible for inspiring Scorsese to start making movies as any.
That's true too. Yeah.
So much so that I think it essentially led to his ongoing career-long collaboration with Thelma Schumacher as his editor, who is the widow of Michael Powell, the director of Red Shoes. And before Michael Powell's death, Scorsese played a major role in kind of resuscitating appreciation for his films, starting with stuff like Peeping Tom. So The Red Shoes is an incredibly influential movie, and that's on a number of like special edition DVDs. I don't know if it's on Blu-ray yet, but it's out there, available.
Oh, The Red Shoes? Yeah, The Red Shoes is the Criterion Blu-ray, yeah.
Did they do a Blu-ray of it? I don't know.
Yeah,
I didn't know they had yet.
Downstairs in our family room, yeah.
All right, we'll bring that over.
Okay, I'll bring it over. One I do want to mention, and he's obviously new, is Declan Quinn, who did like Leaving Las Vegas and God, what else? And a lot of like modern movies, One True Thing. But he did a movie from Maya Neer, and he's done a couple of her movies, Vanity Fair and Kama Sutra. But I don't know if the Kama Sutra is hers, but Monsoon Wedding, which is an absolutely beautiful, just astounding film. I saw that 10 years ago, and it made me want to move to India. It was so beautiful. He also did Breakfast on Pluto, which is, he did Get Rich or Die Trying too. I mean, not everything's perfect, but Monsoon Wedding is just beautiful.
That he can do something like Monsoon Wedding, and he can also do something like Leaving Las Vegas, which is as guerrilla as it gets, a Super 16 film, just kind of on the fly, and he gets just a very special quality. Mm-hmm. He captures it in that movie. Another one of the great modern DPs is Darius Khondji.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We might be massacring some of these names, but I just think about Seven, and then I think of his follow-up, his two follow-ups, which was Stealing Beauty with Bertolucci, and then Evita, which whatever you think of the movie,
still
Evita,
a beautiful movie.
It's absolutely stunning looking. And then he shot My Blueberry Nights, which I think is an incredibly underrated Wong Kar-wai movie.
Oh, it is.
I just recently watched that, and I was quite impressed with that. And that is some beautiful photography in that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm telling you, it's actually some of it's overwhelming.
It's a good movie. I like that movie. I don't know why.
And he shot Midnight in Paris, which is one of the most. And it carries over a quality that he gave to My Blueberry Nights in Midnight in Paris, is that it's just incredibly enchanting, his photography in both of those movies. I mean, Midnight in Paris has a very special golden nostalgia that just feels just so tailor-made for that movie.
I want to bring up another one of my favorites, who started off working with Milos Forman back in Czechoslovakia, Miroslav Ondříček, who worked with Foreman up until Vilmos in '89. So that means he did Amadeus and Ragtime, Hair, but he also did things like Slaughterhouse-Five and World According to Garp with George Roy Hill, and also Silkwood with Mike Nichols, and even a little comedy like Heaven Help Us from '85, which is another example of like a beautifully shot comedy. And then my favorites of his movies are Lindsay Anderson's If and Lucky Man. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, got another just incredible career, and each one of those movies demands something so radically different. I mean, imagine doing Hair one year and then going to work on Ragtime the next year.
Right.
Well, Spike Lee makes incredible looking movies too. Mm-hmm. And 25th Hour, I think, is shot by Rodrigo Prieto. Again, I'm massacring the pronunciation of his name, I'm sure, which is an incredible-looking movie. But also something like Summer of Sam. If you think like an adventurous visual palette, Summer of Sam is out there. That's shot by Ellen Kuras. And I read an interview with her, and she said, I loved working with Spike Lee because any crazy idea I came up with, he'd say, okay, let's try it. Which has to be just the most gorgeous thing for an artist and a creative collaboration. All right, let's do it. How could it hurt?
Yeah, that movie does have a distinct look too.
She also shot He Got Game, which is, I mean, He Got Game and Summer of Sam both are
both
some
are
of my
incredible
favorite
movies.
Spike Lees. And Four Little Girls for Spike Lee. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Bergman's DP. I mean, if you think
of
Nykvist. Yeah, if you think of like these kind of lifelong collaborations, and obviously some just gorgeously stark and rich black and white photography in these movies. If you think of like this, the Seventh Seal and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then you think of something like Cries and Whispers, with just the most gorgeous color photography you've ever seen in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And these
all
flashes,
those reds in it and everything.
all these flashes of primal reds in that movie. I mean, the movie feels like passion and sickness and death and all of those things. It's a very special movie. I always return to that movie. It's one of my favorite Bergmans, actually.
I mean, and then you look at, Fanny and Alexander, which is just absolutely one of my favorite movies of all time, like really my second favorite movie of all time. But, again, just an unbelievable looking movie. But then again, you look at some of the other stuff he did with other directors, like even people like, Paco with Starting Over, or Fosse with Star 80. Kaufman with Unbearable Likeness of Being. Woody Allen with another.
Who shot the Fosse stuff?
Well, Fosse worked with a whole bunch. I don't think he worked with a cinematographer more than once. So I know that Bruce Jeffrey Unsworth did Cabaret. Bruce Surtees did Lenny. Giuseppe Ruttano, who was Fellini's photographer, did All That Jazz.
Yes,
and then
I see
Sven Nykvist with Star 80. And then I can't remember who did Sweet Charity. But
Unsworth was the DP of several great films. I think he was the DP of A Night to Remember, the Titanic movie. But he was also, most legendarily, if that's a word, the DP of 2001, wasn't he?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And his work in that was so groundbreaking. And I remember that they were looking for a DP for Star Wars. And whoever they went to for it, who did they go to for Star Wars?
It was Oswald Morris who did Star Wars, I think.
Okay.
I think so. I'll check that out. But
I'm checking it out now. It was actually Gilbert Taylor.
Gilbert
Taylor, the first thing he said, I think, to Lucas was, well, you need to get Jeffrey Unsworth. And Lucas said, well, we tried, but he's busy. So we're
busy doing Superman, probably.
We're going to you. That had to felt good. Yeah.
I mean, Unsworth did great stuff, too. Zardoz and Murder on the Orient Express, Tess. And then he did the first two Superman movies, Unsworth. But Tess was his last movie. He died in the process of making Tess, so it had to be taken over by Ghislaine Cloquet. And they both won. He won a posthumous Oscar for that as well. So.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up actually a movie I saw a couple of weeks ago by a cinematographer who's been around for a while, but the movie Norwegian Wood. And the cinematographer is, let me get if I can get it. He also was one of the cinematographers, I think, for In the Mood for Love, and that would be Bing Tin Lee. And it's just a beautiful-looking movie. It's also got a soundtrack by Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead, who also did There Will Be Blood. But it's just, regardless of what you think, I mean, it's a hard movie to get into. If you read the book, it's kind of easier. But it's just a beautiful-looking movie of the side of Japan, and it's just beautiful. I mean, absolutely, astoundingly beautiful. I know it's a recent one, and there's obviously someone like an older cinematographer like Carl Strauss who did The Island of Lost Souls and some of the Tarzan movies and a lot of old classic movies. I mean, The Island of Lost Souls is one of the most beautiful, and it's still my favorite version of the Island that Dr. Moreau put to screen. I mean, it was absolutely just beautiful. The black and white cinematographers are just astounding.
Well, and I mean, a lot of those noir films, I mean, the classic noir films are essentially lessons in how to deal with shadows and light.
Yeah.
You know, when I think of something like Citizen Kane, I think of the way it was shot, and you think of the great DP director collaborations. I mean, they brought out the very best in one another.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to. I've read biographies of Orson Welles. I'd really love to read an examination of their relationship. Because, I mean, just the way Citizen Kane is shot, and so, I mean, in the early part of the film, you're just overtaken by the stature of the man.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd even go so far as to dig a hole in on the set so that he could stand in the hole and look up at Orson Welles' particular vantage point. So he's towering in that early section of that film. And there's a great moment where Orson Welles is walking into a room after he's hearing that, you know, his finances are going bust.
Right.
And they constructed the set so that the window is like extremely large that he walks towards.
Right.
So he walks from one room into that one. And it gives the impression that as he's hearing this news, he gets smaller and smaller.
Mm-hmm. That's right,
It's the trick that the eye plays. But in actuality, I mean, he's being dwarfed by that massive window.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's like such visual ingenuity. And the most famous example of very special cinematography in that movie, outside of the newsreel footage, of course, would have to be that dinner table scene.
Oh, yeah.
They set up the disillusion of that relationship from a dinner table scene. And, I mean, this has to do with staging as well, of course, but they go hand in hand, Orson Welles staging and the cinematography, because he and his wife, it flashes to like 4 or 5 different conversations to show the duration of that relationship, and each time they grow farther and farther apart until they're at opposite ends of the table, and you understand emotionally and intellectually they don't have anything between them anymore. I mean, that's a good example. That's a great example. Yeah. Good stuff.
I have I want to pay tribute to a few other cinematographers real quickly. Emmanuel Lubezki, who did Little Princess, and Malik Stone's New World, The Tree of Life.
Who will probably win the Oscar this year, I would think.
I think he's like he's one of the best. Children of Men, unbelievable. Robbie Mueller, who did a lot of Wim Wenders movies like Paris, Texas, and has worked with Jarmusch on Mystery Train and Dead Man, and
Dead Man's a great example.
And also with Von Trier on Breaking the Waves and Dancer in the Dark. Chris Menzies, who did Local Hero and The Mission and The Killing Field. Michael Collins. Robert Elswit, who works with Paul Thomas Anderson.
There Will Be Blood. And he shot Mission Impossible 4.
Right.
I mean,
Good Night and Good Luck as well. He did. And then one of my personal favorites is because these are, you know, I'm a big fan of Mike Leigh, and I like his relationship with his longtime cinematographer Dick Pope. And I love the feel of those movies, the look and the feel of those movies, the sort of rainy day kind of feel to them. That there's just something beautiful about them, and he does period pieces really well too, with things like Topsy Turvy and one non-Mike Leigh movie, The Illusionist. So I mean, there's so many great, you know, old time photographers: Russell Meddy, Freddie Francis, Leon Shamroy, John Seitz, Robert Surtees. You know, these are all great names. You know, Jordan Cronenweth, Nestor Almendros.
Well, yeah,
these are all
and Nestor has what many people consider the most beautiful movie ever made, which is Days of Heaven.
Yeah.